While on duty in the United States Navy, I was munching on a hard-boiled egg and got choked. I could only breathe in. My lungs filled until they could fill no more. I felt as though I could get the egg out of my mouth I might live. I walked to a water fountain that was nearby and turned on the water. I tried to drink, and as the water touched my lips, I was shocked with 120 volts. My immediate realization was that I had received an electrical shock, of which I certainly expected to survive. I still experienced total breathing difficulties because of the egg lodged at my esophagus. I cleared some of the egg with a finger, but I could not breathe. I was experiencing some panic by this time and could think of no way to help myself survive this accident. I thought of my Lord and said to myself, "At least I am a Christian." I looked into the adjoining room and saw my supervisor sitting in a swivel chair working on a radio message. Realizing I could still walk, I did so until I reached his chair. I could not speak, so I used the last of my energy to kick his chair in order to get his attention. He was knocked to the floor and there he lay along with the typewriter. I am on the floor near my supervisor as I fell also. Another sailor by the name of Joe was watching my actions. I was now quiet and not breathing. I was bleeding from the bridge of my nose, having struck the desk as I fell. In moments, Joe began back pressure life-saving methods on me. This is now called CPR. Another sailor call an ambulance. I was near the ceiling of this room watching the sailors doing things to save my life. I was feeling just fine. I realized that the unconscious body on the floor was mine, but I had the least concern for it. I was seeing myself as others had seen me. There was no opposite reflection from looking into a mirror this time. I felt good and energetic and soon lost any interest in watching the sailors working with my body. I was in spirit form and yet I still felt alive, as I had been earlier. I suppose I had expected to be dead, but all this was so new to me. I was learning this new life fast and without much concern for anything. However, this new way of living had left me feeling puzzled. For instance, when I would think of something, I did it automatically. I looked at the wall near me and at the next moment, I was going through it. I was back into the room where I had been sitting when I was choked. I floated around this room at will. I traveled through the many radios and teletype machines with no problem. I saw a darkened area near my desk and I traveled to it. The next thing I knew, I was entering this darkened mist. Once inside, I wanted out badly. This thing was engulfing me. The feeling was that of being inside a person. I felt alarmed and missed the free-floating spirit I was earlier. Eventually, I was released from this squeezing and hot area. It was as if I was inside a womb, but how can this be imagined? My next realization was that I was in a tunnel. I estimate the size of this tunnel to be a diameter of 6 to 7 feet. I could stand without touching the top. My height was 5 foot 10 inches. Immediately I was hurling along the tunnel much faster than I wished. The speed was tremendous. I was scared. Somewhere along my journey in this tunnel, I slowed to a stop and a man calmed me and told me the trip was nearing an end. Away I went again at the same speed as before. I do not know how I survived the trip. The speed had to be at the speed of light or even faster. I felt no G-forces, only fear and the exhilaration of a terrible speed. Finally, I stopped moving through the tunnel and had a good chance to look at it. The tunnel looked like a large vent pipe used on clothes dryers. The light was not primarily inside the tunnel but from the outside shining in. During the trip inside the tunnel, I heard a loud buzzing sound, which hurt my ears. I wondered what supported the tunnel. Now I began walking looking for the ending of this tunnel. I was now into a much larger area and surrounded by a white mist and daylight. The light I was seeing diminished all my fears of the tunnel. I heard voices of people just outside this area. The voices were encouraging me to come through the white mist. I walked through the white mist and saw about a dozen people. Instinct told me they were all man and wife. I had seen these people before, but I could remember none of their names. One man told me not to worry about not remembering any names. Soon someone came for me. The man was about 27 years of age and he was wearing levis and a white t-shirt. The other 12 people were wearing white robes. The man wearing the levis explained to me that he was my guide. He explained to me that later I would meet other people, but he wanted me to walk with him to see this new place. We walked through the most beautiful flower gardens I had ever seen. I observed in detail the petals of the flowers. When viewing grass lawns, I focused upon single blades of grass and marveled at the beauty of each blade. This man and I communicated via thought transference as I had done with the group of 12 people. I saw a city of large buildings in the distance. The buildings were the color of gold and my guide told me they were gold. My guide told me if I wished I could think of being closer to the city and I would be. Sure enough, I thought of being closer and suddenly I was at the very edge of the golden city. I saw little waterfalls in the flower gardens that were absolutely breathtaking. I felt so good. Later my guide turned me over to another man and this man explained to me that I would now go through my life's review. During this review, which lasted about 1 second or less, I saw all that I had previously seen while living on Earth. I relived every conversation I had had. I saw each pet I had owned. I saw again each piece of clothing I had worn. I relived every class I had attended in school. I saw everything again. It was here in this building, looking much like a library, that my life's review ended. It was here also that I learned that I would not be staying in this heavenly place. I was so disappointed to learn I had to go back to Earth. I cried and cursed those around me. My guide came for me and took me to see 2 schoolmates that had died 4 years earlier. I was shocked to see them living. On Earth, they had been football players in high school. One day they were late for football practice and their coach had made them run laps around the field after practice. This placed them into the dressing room long after the other players had left. There was no hot water for showers. The 2 sat waiting for the water heater to furnish hot water for their showers and were gassed to death by fumes that escaped from the natural gas water heater. Ironically, one of the boys' dad was the plumber who installed the heater just days before and was coming back on another day to install the vent pipe to the outside of this new shower room. I asked the 2 boys why they were here because each was supposed to be dead. They explained to me that no one ever dies. The 2 boys were about the same age as I had last seen them on Earth. Both appeared to be happy and content to be here. My guide took me back to where I had my life's review. I asked once more if I could stay. A man told me I had to return to Earth to live out my life. I remembered from my Sunday school classes that if a person asks to see the Lord, he shall see him. I asked to see Jesus. With my guide beside me, I walked or floated to a small stage. My guide left me here. I did not have to wait long before I heard a voice on this stage near where I stood. A mist was forming on the stage and I heard a voice asking me if I could see him. I could only see the mist and hear the voice. The voice asked me to concentrate more and I would be able to see him. Soon I saw Jesus standing in front of me. He asked me what I wanted of him. I told him I had learned I would have to return to Earth and I did not want to leave this heavenly place. He explained to me that I had not yet performed his wishes that he had set forth for me in my lifetime. I asked him what some wishes of his were and he did not answer me. He said I would know at the right time, sometime in my future. He asked of other possible things he could do for me. Since I was in the U.S. Navy at the time, I asked that he get me transferred to the state of Tennessee. I explained to him that I had spent a month in this state as a boy of 12 and I wanted to return there because the state was beautiful. He did not answer me. I asked if he had considered it. He told me that I only had to ask once and it would be done. Jesus told me of many things I would experience in my lifetime. I only remember what he told me after I have experienced the event. He did tell me, and I remember this, to tell all people of my visit with him. He implied into me to tell people that he is real. Another thing I will never forget is feeling the radiation of his love as he stood near me. That was the most perfect love I have ever felt. Jesus told me I would be escorted back to my home on earth soon. 2 men came for me and they explained they were my guardian angels. One of the men had been my guide earlier. I do not remember coming back to earth through the tunnel. We traveled through the darkness of space. On our way back to Earth, we stopped for a talk. One guardian angel told me that someday I would meet a lady and she would become my very close friend. I was told that I would not meet her now, as she was still a very young girl. This was 1957. I have looked for her since then and think I have found her, but she lives in Australia. I woke up sitting on an examination table in the hospital. I asked the 3 doctors if I had been given any medication that would make me believe I had died and gone to heaven. They said no. I said, well, I have just returned from heaven. 2 doctors immediately walked out and the remaining 3rd doctor told me he just did not know what to think.